Hey, Julia, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well as well. I'm so excited to have you on my podcast, the Open Mic Podcast, which is exciting to me to have another reporter on because you do music and I pretend to do music as well. So it's really cool to be able to sort of talk shop with an expert.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah. So why don't you just sort of start us off by introducing yourself a little bit about what you do for the Columbus Dispatch and any other sort of outlets that you might report for.
Yeah, for sure. So I am technically in the features department at the Columbus Dispatch, which means that I write about everything. Like I've written about popsicles, I've written about taco trucks, I've written about kidney transplants, you name it, and I've probably written about it. But I also have the music beat at the paper. So every week I am responsible for writing a preview story of a national act that's going to be playing. And then I also interview local bands every week as well, sort of, keep in touch with the local scene.
That's very cool. So it sounds to me, for me, the jobs that you have, the coolest one would definitely get to be the music reporting portion.
Yes, it is. It's great. I also do some concert reviews here and there.
Okay.
So it is pretty dreamy. I will admit that.
Yeah. So I have a whole bunch of questions, and I don't want to jump the gun. So we'll definitely get back to pretty much everything that has already been discussed. But I just sort of wanted to give you a little bit of a shout out because I don't know if you remember this, but I sent you an email maybe 4 months ago, maybe even longer. And it was pretty much just one of those like shooting your shot moments where I just really wanted to sort of talk to you. And we emailed back and forth about your about your window to the world. And how I was comparing it to my newsroom after hours. And in doing that sort of conversation, we ended up talking about the podcast that you run as sort of a preview of the concert that you guys do every Friday, correct?
Yes, I do remember that well.
Yeah, and so basically 37 weeks later, here we are on the Open Mic Podcast. So I just wanted to thank you because it's been one of my favorite things that I get to do at work now.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Yeah, I think it's so nice when we have all these other outlets to sort of pursue, the things that we're interested in these days, like through podcasting and through concerts. It's great.
Yeah, well, it seems to me like a music podcast is so obvious because you're already listening to music on your iPod, and so it just sort of seems like a seamless transition to go from listening to a musician play music to getting to sort of hear the background details via a podcast. And I think it's really cool that you get to do this because it's not something that's always been available. Like before I think early 2000s, maybe late 90s, podcasts weren't really a big thing. And now we sort of have this extra way to reach out to the listeners. And that's something that even bands that I've spoken to have said as well. Have you felt that similar feeling, I guess?
Yeah, I think, the music industry, like the same things that have really, aided in its reach have also sort of hurt it in some ways. But I know that especially at like the smaller and local level, things like podcasts and, Twitter and Instagram have really allowed musicians to expand beyond just their local community. So I definitely have heard that.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the podcast that you run, more specifically what it's about.
Yeah, so the Window on the World podcast is connected to our Window on the World concert series that we do every Friday at noon in the Dispatch building. So right in the front window, we just have a bunch of local bands come in, and then the first year was definitely an experiment. Like, we didn't have a real sound system. We didn't have a sound guy. It was kind of, it got a little messy at times, but we learned a lot. And then the second year, we started doing, at the end of the year, we started doing a podcast where after the musician or band was finished with their concert, we just took them upstairs and I just asked them questions about what they just played and, their latest albums, and just sort of to continue that conversation. And so the podcast is a mashup of the performance that they just did, because we record the audio for that, and then the Q&A session.
Gotcha. And before I forget to ask you, what is the name of that podcast so listeners could listen to it?
Yeah, it's called Window on the World. But I think on podcast apps, it's Window on the World Concert. But
Okay.
it's really easy to find because the little photo that goes with it says Window on the World. So that's how you know where you found it.
Okay, great. And so, you're describing a lot of things that a Richland source has felt about the Newsroom After Hours. It's definitely sort of a labor of love, and
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really expected as much difficulty in doing something so simple as putting on a concert. And so that includes, of course, the sound system. And actually last week I interviewed the sound guy that we have. He's in a band called Coma Love, and they played at our most recent After Hours, which was this past Friday. And without him, we just wouldn't have been able to do what we're able to do. And it's just so funny how you just don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly. Yeah, Luke is our sound guy. He's amazing. And I just had no idea. I thought, we'll just have like a little concert. Bands can just like bring their own monitors, and then we like ended up hooking into like some really old sound system that was our editor in chief from his church. I don't know. It was like the first year we had no idea, and then Luke came, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's this whole other side to music that I know not much about, which is the production side. So I've been able to learn a little bit about it, which has been really beneficial in a lot of areas.
Yeah. So how long do musicians play?
They play 30-ish minutes. We've had people go shorter, we've had people go way longer, but that's sort of the average.
And are these mostly Columbus-based musicians, or do you reach out to national acts as well?
We do Columbus-based musicians just because it's a little easier, and national acts, like, I'm previewing them before they come, and usually they don't have a ton of time, so stop by. And I've honestly really enjoyed making it local because the dispatch is a pretty wide reach in the city. So it's just nice for me to feel like I'm, able to help the musicians out in some small way by just introducing more people to them who probably would not have, known about them, or at least, would have had to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how I think we feel at Richland Source, in the same way. Not that we reach the same amount of people because Columbus is a larger city than Mansfield, but I think that they definitely are getting some sort of real promotion out of playing with Richland Source's After Hours, Newsroom After Hours. So,
that's the hope.
Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
Oh, no, go ahead.
You said you write one preview show a week?
Yes.
For a national act?
Yeah, it runs in our Weekender section every Thursday. So I just kind of look ahead at the calendar, see who's coming up, and try to get a hold of them, which sometimes is really easy and sometimes is impossible.
Yeah, well, that's funny because, I've known of the Columbus Dispatch probably my entire life, and I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. So it's funny to me that I just think it's funny that national acts would potentially stiff you, because it's like, oh, yeah, that's one of the bigger papers in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, I think it is. So, well, but, like the way that the world is turning, people are so focused on, there's a lot of reasons for that. Bands now, national acts run their own publicity through their own social media, so they see it as not needing the publicity of a local paper. Some of them think that they can't really reach a much broader audience through the newspaper because maybe it's not where their target demographic finds their news. Some of them just get hounded, and then the rise of music blogs and all that has sort of made people just have so many requests for publicity. Obviously it's my job, so I think it's important. I just read a really interesting New York Times opinion piece from their music writer talking about the death of the celebrity profile in magazines, but how it's really important and artists don't realize that because it sort of allows the writer to fill in for the audience and sort of, challenge them on their music and get details that they wouldn't maybe ever put out through social media. So I sort of see my preview stories as a much smaller version of the celebrity profile in GQ or whatever. It's like it's important for the readers to kind of familiarize themselves with someone before they know whether or not that's something a show they might be interested in going to.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. So besides writing the feature stories for the national act, you also, I've seen you do something called the Local Music Limelight, which we sort of discussed a little bit earlier. Talk to me a little bit about that. It's more or less a brief, right?
Yeah, so it's just a short Q&A with some sort of local band that's playing a show that week. And honestly, that's one of my favorite parts of what I do, just because the people that I get to know, I see them around town. I feel like for them, it's pretty exciting to be in the newspaper, and for me, it's exciting to feel like I'm a little more connected with the community where I live and where I work. So, and a lot of times I get to meet up with them in person, which is way more fun than doing a phone call.
Yeah. It is. It's funny how a phone call, sort of even like this, is way harder to do an interview, in my opinion, than doing it in person, because I'm even afraid sometimes to talk to someone over the phone because I'm worried I'm going to interrupt them, like I've already done at least once during this phone call. So I definitely understand that. Do you ever cover local shows?
I don't. I know the Dispatch did a little bit, not much of that back in the day. Columbus Alive used to, which is the weekly that is in the same company as the Dispatch. They used to cover local shows. They don't quite as much. They preview on local shows. But just, we don't have quite enough manpower to do reviews of local shows, which is unfortunate. Although, if it's a bigger local act, so I covered Lydia Lovelace a couple of years ago, and I reviewed St. Seneca's show. They're a Columbus band who kind of has a national, both of those are Columbus bands who have national followings. So if they're a big enough band, then I might, but not usually for smaller music preview those generally.
Okay, cool. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about sort of the fan side of being the music reporter. I know that I've read your Beyonce concert coverage. Talk to me a little bit about some of your favorite shows that you've gotten to see. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. So the first show I ever reviewed as an intern, I had no idea what I was doing. It was Walking Mill in 2015, and it rained, and I don't think I had a pencil, and I was so in over my head. But it was so fun. Like, I felt it was kind of a rush with having to write on that tight of a deadline. You're exhausted, and it's raining. But things have definitely dramatically improved since then. I think Kendrick Lamar was one of my favorites. Because I went in with sort of not low expectations, but just sort of medium expectations, and he was so excellent and planned things out so well that I was blown away. I reviewed the Eagles earlier this year, and my dad went to the show with me, and getting to see one of your dad's favorite teenage group with him, 40 years later, that was pretty special. He sang along to all the words, and I was just scribbling furiously in my notebook, but we had a great time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where do you sit? Are you just with the crowd when you get to do that?
I am, yeah. So writing reviews is a little crazy. It is not for the faint of heart. So I learned wear a hoodie with a front pocket so you can shove your phone charger, your 5 pens, your notebooks, your earplugs, and all of that in, because they don't let you bring in bags usually.
Right.
And you get there, and I usually am fairly close so I can see. But yeah, I'm just, next to screaming fans, and I have to, as soon as it ends, or even before the show ends, I start, putting my notes into my, I write on a notebook, and then I do the reviews on my phone usually. So I use the notes app of my phone to write the review really quickly, and then copy and paste that into my email and send it off to the copy desk. Just sitting in my seat, like, while they're cleaning up after the show. So definitely a wild experience.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'm sure that if you're writing a review, every once in a while you'll cover a show that you don't always like. How do you go about writing a bad review?
Yeah, well, I think most of the shows that I cover are the bigger arena shows, and I have yet to cover a show that was truly terrible. Because if you're famous enough to be playing nationwide arena, you're probably not gonna totally suck.
Right.
There have been plenty of times I've covered people who weren't necessarily my preferred style. And it's hard. It's really hard to get over your own biases. So I just try to do a lot of research and get really familiar with their music so that I kind of know what to expect. And then you have to get out of your own head a little bit and really I'm not like a 5 stars or 0 stars kind of person. I try to just sort of take my readers with me into what I experience, and rather than say, this was amazing, or, this was totally terrible, I guess I try to review based on what I think, the quality that I think the show should be, based on the person's catalog and what the expectations should be, and then see if they met that.
Have you ever sort of changed your mind based on the crowd surrounding you? So, you may not have enjoyed it, but everyone else is rocking out?
Yeah, so when I reviewed Blake Shelton, I do like country, but I'm not the world's biggest Blake Shelton fan personally. And so I was right next to the stage, and the fans were just so obsessed. And so even while I did not walk away from that, a newly minted Blake Shelton fanatic, I think it was good for me to see why he's so popular, and that popularity, holds up. So he sold out, I think it was at Nationwide, or maybe it was the Science Center, but he sold it out. People were so happy to be there, and he gave them so much joy. So I think it's good for me to be reminded of the fact that, yeah, maybe I'm not the biggest fan of this person, but someone likes them, and there's probably a good reason for that.
Sure. And then obviously bias goes in both directions. How do you keep yourself from maybe overhyping a show?
Yeah, that's honestly a lot harder, because I know
sure.
if I know that I'm not a huge fan of someone, then I work really actively to suppress my own negative bias. Mm-hmm. But if I love them, it's way harder to tone down your own passion,
right.
Harder to dim that bulb.
Oh yeah, there's a reason my editor won't let me write political things whenever the Democrats come in town.
Yeah, so it's the same thing, and I guess I just try to go the opposite way. Usually if I really, really like someone, I am more familiar with their catalog automatically. So that's when I go back to sort of my purpose is, I know what this person's capable of, and so I try to grade them based on whether or not they hit that, rather than, did I just adore the show? Did they meet my expectations? But, and then, one thing, this is, a really small, dumb, practical detail, but when I'm covering the show, I don't clap at all, and I, don't dance around, I don't jump, I just sort of stand there and pretend I'm the statue, and that kind of helps me, keep my emotions down. It sounds really sad and kind of lame, but it really does help me not.
No. I totally understand what you're talking about. That happens to me too. I don't really do a lot of concert reviews and stuff, but I definitely have moments where, like, I'm sitting around at, like, a school board meeting or something, and everyone is clapping, and it's like there's more energy or something, and it's like I have to stay still and sort of be like, okay, you're a reporter, so number one, you can't show your bias or happiness or whatever, but also, like, you have to sort of be a part of the moment as an outsider looking in.
Exactly. Like, I don't know, let's see, who have I covered? So, when I covered the Eagles, like, I do throw some Eagles here and there. I just had to remind myself, I am not here as a, paying concert goer who's loved the Eagles for her whole life. I am here to try to help the people at home experience what I'm experiencing. And I think that's helpful, too, if you look at it as, like, this is not me enjoying a concert, it's me recording this concert for posterity, which is kind of one of the hardest things, and I've gotten a lot better at this. When I first started reviewing shows, I could not go to a show for fun and, like, get 100% into it. I'd, like, write reviews in my head. Like, I'd think of leads, I'd, like, judge it, and I'd critique it. And it kind of was sad because I felt like I couldn't enjoy concerts the same way. And I still do that a little bit, but luckily I have a much easier time separating review from just going to something for pleasure nowadays. But it is hard to get out of critic mode for sure.
Well, I'm sure the one with your dad was probably especially hard because you're sort of fighting off the, like, joy of getting to, like, have really made a significant moment in your dad's head. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I just sort of set it off then, and then the next day my dad was like, I found a 3-hour Eagles documentary on Netflix. You should watch it. I was like, okay, I can be in, like, the sharing this moment now.
We talked a little bit earlier, talking specifically about podcasts, about the availability of capturing different types or different forms of journalism. Do you ever, like, record songs or anything for whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, or just like it as an added asset of what people can see on the ColumbusDispatch.com?
I don't do a ton for. I mean, a lot of times I'll take a personal Instagram story. I might start doing Instagram stories at shows for the Columbus Dispatch because I now am able to do that. But every show I go to, I take a 10-second clip of any song. So I do try to record just for my own purposes, just so I can remember what I've been to, because I've been to so many and covered so many shows. And I try to save all my tickets as well.
Right.
But I don't do a lot for the Dispatch, mostly because concerts, like, you can't get a really high-quality concert video unless you are right there and have something better than an iPhone. iPhones are great, but with stage lighting, it is bad. So, sadly, I'm not at the point, and I don't have photo access either. So I'm not quite at the point where I'm able to always, like, take something worthy of being in the paper.
Sure. And just because you sort of brought this up, one of your earlier things you were talking about, you not being a paying member of the audience.
Yeah.
That I sort of feel in similar ways when I go to those sorts of things. Like, I owe it to the person who couldn't go or couldn't afford to go or just didn't show up for whatever reason to give them as best of a replica of the show as possible. Is that something sort of in the back of your head too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't say that I sit there the whole time thinking, all right, like,
right.
Bob Smith, I have to write for him because he couldn't be here. But I think it's my subconscious, and especially when I get emails the next day or comments on Facebook and people say, wow, you made me feel like I was there. That is my goal. It's not like slam, just to slam a musician or to praise them to the roof. Although, I mean, if they deserved it, I will do either of those things. It's to help people feel what I felt and to feel what the rest of the audience feels, and almost as if, you know, they had paid for a ticket. And, you know, you're never going to capture everything in a 400-word review that you wrote in, like, a row of Nationwide Arena while it's, you know, 11:30 p.m. But I try to do my best so that they do get some sort of experience through my words.
Yeah. So I wrote down the word bullet points because you mentioned that there are certain things that you try and double check, sort of keep yourself from straying off too much in a passionate way. What are some of those, or are they different for each concert?
I think just with like any news story, you need the, like, you know, who and where and why and how. So I always try to, you know, at least in my right up at the top to say how many, you know, how full was this? Something I always look for is how full was this show? You know, was it empty? Was it sold out? What's the demographics? Are the demographics what you would expect from what this, you know, what this person is and who they tend to attract? Where was it? When was it? Did they have decent choreography? It's like, you know, it's more a pop show. What was the backdrop or the lighting? Was there anything unexpected? So there's a lot of just basics that I always try to take down to have consistency. And that helps keep every show I go to a little bit streamlined as well.
So we talked a lot about your stories for covering shows. Do you write feature stories on musicians too, correct?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to double check. I thought that you had said that already. Which one do you like doing? Which one do you prefer doing? Is it more fun to sort of get to know in a more intimate level famous acts, or is it fun to be able to go to their shows and be around the crowd?
I think it depends on the individual thing. So if I have, like, for example, I talked to singer-songwriter John Prine last week for my previous story.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up because I was going to bring up your tweet because I thought it was so funny.
So John Prine, who is 71 years old, he was a wonderful interview. So he literally was on his flip phone in the parking lot at his favorite fried chicken restaurant and just talked to me forever. I was finally like, all right, John, you gotta go. Nice talking to you. But he just sat there and he ran through the daily specials every day at this restaurant. That is his favorite. He told me they saved him banana pudding. He told me he does not like his banana pudding cold, but he likes it warm. But he was like, all right, whatever, John.
Yeah.
And so he made it really enjoyable because I feel like he gave me, you know, some of his self and some of his real self, which you don't always get in a, you know, 20-minute phone conversation with someone who's famous. So interviews like that, you know, help me remember why I like doing this. And then there are other times when, you know, you have like 10 minutes with someone and they just answer in monosyllables and it's a real struggle because you still have to write the same number of words with a lot less to work off of. So the beauty of a concert review is that it's kind of the same every time. Like, they're going to play a 2.5-hour show. You only have an hour to write about it, and then you can go home. Whereas it really varies from interview to interview when I'm doing a preview story with how good it is and how interesting they are and, you know, how famous they are and how much background there is for me to sort of research. So, yeah, I'd say that concert reviews are, like, much more finite in just the structure of them. But I do love talking to musicians and trying to get inside their head a little bit.
What do you have, like, the same question that you always try and start off with or anything like that?
No. So I try to spend some time before each interview for my music stories, just doing as much research as I can, you know, given my limited schedule. And
right.
I definitely base my questions around who they are and what they've already been asked, because because there's nothing more embarrassing than asking a famous musician something that they have been asked 10 zillion times, which is really hard because sometimes you do have to ask them a question that they haven't asked before just so you can have a quote, you know?
Right.
And kind of know what their response will be. But the fun part is digging as deep as possible to try to surprise them, you know? Like, you want them to be surprised by the quality or the depth of your questions, which takes a lot of work.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I spoke with a couple of relatively famous or even definitely famous musicians on the Open Mic podcast, and there were definitely times where I could tell that they had heard that question a million times because, like, the excitement in their voice, the decibels went down.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
Yeah.
You know when you nailed it and when you're like, oh, man.
Right. Yeah. No, it's really rewarding to get to hear them like sort of chuckle or like come to a halt and like change the rhythm of their speaking because they're sort of thinking about it as they're answering as opposed to just like pulling it out of a vault of saved answers.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I have on my list. Well, actually, before we get there, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the quote that you used from your conversation on Twitter with John Prine. How did the iPhone thing come up? Because the quote on your Twitter is, "I don't trust iPhones, let alone Twitter," which you almost ironically chose to publicize on Twitter.
Yes, exactly. Isn't that what Twitter is for? Irony and nothing else. Yeah. So I asked him, because a lot of times with musicians, I try to do some good old-fashioned social media stalking before, because a lot of them do, like, especially if they're not quite as famous, do run their own social media, and you can learn a lot about someone from their Instagram posts. So I was just kind of going through his Twitter, and I couldn't quite tell if it was run by him or if it was run by his team. So again, and he's an older musician too, so it's interesting to me to hear about social media from someone who was not brought up with it. And so he immediately was like, Twitter? I don't use Twitter. You think I use Twitter? I'm talking to you on a flip phone. And then that's where that quote came from about how he does not trust iPhones or Twitter. And now I respect him even more.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Do you have any other really cool stories about musicians? I know that journalists love telling stories, so the floor is yours, Julia.
Yeah. Let's see. So I have gotten to talk to some of my favorites are not even people that are hugely famous, but there is something special about saying where I got to talk to, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, who
Wow.
Yeah, he is not the best interview I've ever done, but
well, that's not surprising, but
yes, exactly.
Certainly a really cool thing to be able to tell people.
Exactly. I interviewed Steve Martin and Martin Short together at one point. Yeah.
I bet you laughed so hard. That sounds like an incredible interview.
Yeah, I barely got a word in edgewise. They just ripped off of each other, and I just tried, and they both talk so fast. So I was frantically typing, laughing really loud. All of my fellow journalists, because we have sort of an open seating plan, just sort of looked at me funny, like, what is wrong with Julia? She is losing it over there.
So this is over the phone?
Yes, it was.
That's too bad, because it would have been a really fun interview to sort of record and just hold on to and, like, pass down to family members, too, or something.
Yeah, I wish. So that was really fun. I got to talk to, let's see, when I talked to Lydia Lebrus, that was really fun because she is from Columbus, and so anytime you have someone with an Ohio connection, it just, like, you just inevitably end up talking about Ohio for, like, 5 minutes because and so many more people have Ohio connections than you realize. I kind of call Central Ohio, like, the Kevin Bacon of states, because everyone, like, is, 6 degrees of separation from Ohio, and they just love to talk about their Ohio connections. So I interviewed Natalie Cass a couple weeks ago. She was like, oh my gosh, I'm related to, like, President Cass, who's from Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I think that, I mean, even interviews that aren't as great, are still memorable just for their terribleness.
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah, every interview has something that you can learn from it, even if it's just like, do not ever interview them again. Well, I'm never interviewing them again, right? I don't know if I should reveal their identities or not.
I would love that, but I completely understand why you won't.
Well, okay. So one of the first interviews I did, and this is also me being a very inexperienced reporter. So I think you never know if it was just, and people just have bad days too. So then I interviewed Weird Al Yankovic.
Oh no.
Yeah, Weird Al he was not weird. He wasn't weird at all. He was very normal. And kind of just like, talking to a dad or something. He was a very laid back guy, but he enjoyed his monosyllables for sure. Weird Al was not a fan of giving me sentences that day. So that was a struggle. But, like I said, I try to give people grace because you talk to them for 20 minutes and you don't know what they just did before and what they're about to do after. You don't know if they just had the worst day of their life and you just happen to have them at the worst 20 minutes of the worst day of their life. So I try to extend grace to people that I interview.
Sure. Another question that I think is probably important to ask, you're obviously interviewing really famous people, sometimes like top 40 or top of the chart musicians, and some like, who will go down as legends, like John Prine, for instance. Did it take some time to sort of get used to the fact that like you now have John Prine's cell phone number, or like was there any sort of like fangirl sort of, I don't know if that's a term that you're aware of, but my teenage sisters love it. Was there sort of like a little like, okay, these people are actually just people and I need to treat them like that? Because that's how I feel whenever I have interviewed professional athletes.
Yeah, I think so. I think, I don't know. I think because I grew up around journalists, and my dad is a journalist. He also works as a dispatch. He's a sports journalist.
Yeah,
so I actually knew that. Yeah, so I grew up with him interviewing famous, like, famous athletes in the world on a regular basis. And so I think that was a really good preparation for me to not be starstruck, because I grew up with my dad going, oh yeah, I just saw Tiger Woods. And I was like, oh no, no. And so when I got there, I realized, you know what, like, interviewing Tiger Woods did not really change my dad's life in any perceptible way, like, and he kept his cool, so I can do that as well. That was good preparation. And then I think it's like, if you're allowed to let yourself be enthusiastic when you're talking to them, but if you go full-blown fangirl, you're just not going to probably have as good of an interview, Like, you want to just, if you view them as, like, a friend or as a colleague or as, your parent, you're going to have a much more meaningful conversation if you can kind of put your nerves and your, like, excitement in a box for 20 minutes and then unpack it after you're done. But it is good to, like, be interested in their work. Because when you're clearly interested, people open up a lot more.
Yeah. No, I found the exact same thing as well. Is there any musician who you like are keeping your eye on, hoping that they come through Columbus so that you'll get to interview them? Any bucket list people?
Oh man, I don't know if Fleetwood Mac is doing interviews, but they're coming through in November. And if they are, I would. Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, okay.
So if they were doing interviews, I would definitely have to rein in that excitement.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, sorry. I interrupted you again.
Oh, you're good. So the group Boy Genius, which is Julian Baker, Lucy Dacus, and Phoebe Bridgers.
They're so good.
They're amazing. Yeah.
I've been a big Julian Baker fan for a long time.
Yeah, she's wonderful. And they're not coming through Columbus, unfortunately. But if I could will them to come through Columbus, that would be pretty exciting to talk to them.
Right. How can people find your work on Twitter or if you have a Facebook page or anything like that?
Yeah, so they can follow me on Twitter. I'm just at Julia Oller, Oller. My Facebook is also Julia Oller, and then they can read my work on the Columbus Dispatch's website, which is dispatch.com. We do have a paywall, so support local journalism. I think you can get 12 weeks for 99 cents or something crazy. And then I do share occasionally concert posts and musings on my Instagram, which is also, you can find me at Julia Oller, but I kept it pretty simple.
I think that's a smart move to keep it the same all the way through. Mine's pretty much the same too. It's NoJo15 on almost every social media platform except for Facebook. Actually, no, that's not true. The call letters or whatever you want to call it. I know that sounds like a library, but it's NoJo15. So I think that's a smart move for helping everyone reach or having everyone figure out where to find you.
Yeah, I do my best to make it easy for the fans,
Right. Well, I am officially out of questions. Is there anything else that you were hoping to be able to tell the listeners?
I think that's fine. If they have more questions about music journalism, they can always hit me up on Twitter or Instagram or, slide into those DMs.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining the Open My podcast, Julia.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Noah.
Yeah, I hope that we get to actually meet in person someday soon. But we've taken a big step today from email to phone call.
Yes, a new level of our friendship.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, you as well. Bye.
Bye.